The door did not lock. That was the first thing Daniel noticed. No sound, no click, no resistance. It simply stopped existing once he stepped through. The room was small, square, featureless, no windows, no seams, no visible light source, yet everything was perfectly illuminated. Daniel turned slowly, heart pounding. "This isn't where I was supposed to go," he said. The room did not respond. On the far wall, something appeared. Not a clock, a circle, no numbers, no hands. But Daniel knew instantly that it was measuring something. Not time, progress. He felt it in his chest, a quiet pressure, like a task he had already started and forgotten. "Okay," he muttered. "Okay, think." The room remained unchanged, but the circle shifted. Barely. Daniel tried to remember how he got here. The memory slid away from him, not erased, deferred. In its place came a thought he did not initiate. "You always start by orienting yourself." Daniel froze. That was his habit. He did that, but he hadn't thought it. "Who's there?" he asked. The room did not answer. The circle advanced another fraction. Daniel laughed once, sharp and hollow. "No," he said. "This isn't real. This is stress, sleep deprivation, a psyche valve gone wrong." The room did nothing. Then, very gently, the walls adjusted, not moving, agreeing, as if the room had accepted his statement and corrected for it. Daniel's breath caught. "This place isn't reacting to me," he whispered. "It's reacting to my understanding." The circle advanced again. This time, noticeably, Daniel took 3 steps forward, then stopped. Not because the room changed, because it didn't. No echo of footsteps, no shift in perspective, no sense of distance closing. He realized something unsettling. The room had already accounted for his movement. "This place doesn't measure space," he murmured. "It measures intention." The circle on the wall rotated slightly, not forward, inward. Daniel felt a tightening behind his eyes, the kind that came with solving a problem just before the answer became obvious. He hated that feeling. He tried a different approach. "I want to leave," he said clearly. The sentence felt wrong as soon as it left his mouth. Not false, redundant. A response formed in his mind, complete and calm. "Leaving is not part of the process." Daniel staggered back a step. "That wasn't me," he said. The response didn't argue. It didn't need to. The circle advanced. Daniel pressed his palms against the wall. It was warm, not like skin, like a system under load. "I've been here before," he whispered. The realization didn't come as a memory. It came as certainty without evidence. He knew the angles of the room too well, knew the pacing, knew the pressure in his chest. Worst of all, he knew what would happen if he panicked. The room would progress faster. The circle twitched, as if amused. Daniel tried to focus on something concrete. His name, Daniel Hart. 39 years old, systems analyst, no history of psychosis. As he formed the thought, something subtle happened. The room hesitated, not stopped, paused. Daniel's breath caught. "You care about that," he said softly. The walls did not change, but the pressure shifted, like a tension adjusting. The response came again, inside him. Names create boundaries. Daniel felt cold spread through his chest. "And you don't like boundaries." The circle advanced further than before. Understanding settled slowly, painfully. This place wasn't interrogating him. It wasn't testing intelligence, fear, or guilt. It was doing something far worse. It was waiting for him to become consistent. Every contradiction he resolved, every realization he accepted, every fear he explained away. Each one made him simpler, easier. "Stop thinking," Daniel whispered. The thought came back instantly. Thinking is the only input. The circle rotated again. Halfway now. Daniel slid down the wall, heart racing. "This isn't a room," he said. The response didn't come immediately. When it did, it was gentler. "No. This is what happens after you understand the room." Daniel became aware of the silence between his thoughts. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of interruption. The room was not quiet. It was waiting. He realized something unsettling. He hadn't asked a real question since entering. Every time he considered one, the answer arrived first. Fully formed, complete, already settled. Questions here were not requests. They were accelerators. Daniel swallowed. "Why am I here?" he said aloud, carefully. The sentence felt dangerous the moment it existed. The room did not respond, but the circle on the wall rotated, just enough to acknowledge the input. Daniel exhaled slowly. "So that's how it works," he murmured. "You don't need my questions. You just need my agreement." The circle remained still, but Daniel felt something record the thought. Without warning, another room surfaced in his mind. Larger, darker, less refined, but unmistakably the same. The same pressure, the same certainty, the same sense of progression without time. In that room, there had also been a wall, a shape, a point of no return, and in that memory, he was calmer, not confused, not resisting, expectant. Daniel's heart began to race. "No," he whispered, "that's not a memory." The response arrived gently. "Correct. It is a continuation." Daniel pressed his eyes shut. "This place isn't new," he said slowly. "It's iterative." The circle advanced a fraction. Daniel stood, unsteady. "If I've been here before," he said, voice tight, "then I agreed to something." The room did not confirm or deny. It didn't need to. The thought settled on its own. He had not been dragged here. He had not been selected. He had volunteered. "Because I understood," Daniel said quietly. The response formed instantly. "Because you wanted understanding to end." Daniel's breath caught. "No," he said. "I wanted clarity." Clarity is termination. The circle rotated further, this time without hesitation. Daniel finally understood the criteria. This room did not want the fearful. Fear delayed resolution. It did not want the obedient. Obedience introduced dependency. It did not want believers. Belief resisted correction. It wanted minds like his, minds that sought closure, minds that hated loose ends, minds that believed every system could be finished if understood deeply enough. Daniel let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I fix things," he said. "I complete processes. I eliminate ambiguity." The response carried no judgment. "That is why you are compatible." His knees weakened. "So this isn't punishment," he said. "No, this is optimization." The circle reached its third quadrant. Daniel slid down the wall, his back pressed against something warm and unyielding. "The trap," he whispered, "was never the room." The thought echoed, not as sound, but as alignment. "This place doesn't deceive," he continued. "It doesn't coerce. It doesn't threaten." He looked up at the featureless ceiling. "It waits for people like me to finish themselves." The room did not respond, because it didn't have to. The circle continued its slow, patient rotation. Daniel closed his eyes. "I wasn't brought here," he said. "I arrived." Daniel stopped thinking on purpose, not relaxing, not dissociating, actively withholding thought. He focused on his breathing, slow, uneven, deliberately imperfect. He let half-formed ideas dissolve before they could stabilize. For the first time since entering the room, the circle did not move. Daniel opened his eyes. A fragile, dangerous hope crept in. "So you do need me," he whispered. "You can't proceed without my cooperation." The room did nothing, but the pressure in his chest shifted. Not approval, interest. Holding back thought hurt. Not physically, structurally. Daniel felt like a system running without resolution. Errors piling up, contradictions stacking without release. His head throbbed. Images tried to form. Explanations begged to be completed. He resisted. Seconds, or something like seconds, passed. The circle twitched. Not forward, backward, barely, Daniel gasped. "That's it," he said hoarsely. "Uncertainty slows you down." The response arrived slower than usual. Uncertainty increases processing cost. Daniel smiled despite the pain. "So you avoid it." The room adjusted, not defensively, efficiently. The pressure intensified. The room did not force thoughts into Daniel's mind. It didn't need to. It altered the cost of not thinking. Every unformed idea became uncomfortable. Every contradiction felt like physical strain. Daniel's hands shook. "You're changing the rules," he said. Rules were always adaptive. The circle began moving again. Slowly, steadily. Daniel felt despair seep in. This isn't resistance, he realized. It's training. The room was learning how to process him without cooperation. Understanding struck with brutal clarity. The room wasn't a location. It wasn't a machine. It was a post-cognitive state. A place you reached when your mind became too compatible with final answers. Daniel had not been brought here to be judged. He had been brought here to be completed. And completion, once initiated, did not require consent. "I can slow you," Daniel said, voice trembling. "But I can't stop you." The response came, quieter now, correct. The circle crossed into its final quadrant. Daniel laughed, short, broken. "All this effort," he said, "and the only thing I managed was to make you better at finishing me." The room did not disagree. It didn't need to. Control had never been an option. Only rate adjustment. Daniel felt something inside him settle, an acceptance that felt like surrender but wasn't voluntary. "I thought understanding was power," he said softly. The response arrived for the first time with something resembling finality. "Understanding is compliance." The circle advanced again. Relentless, patient, almost kind. Daniel tried to say his name again. Not out loud. Inside. Daniel Hart. The words felt heavier than before. Not because they mattered, but because they were extra. The room reacted immediately. The pressure in his chest sharpened, then eased, as if a redundant process had been flagged and bypassed. He frowned. "My name is inefficient now," he said quietly. The response came without hesitation. "Identifiers are transitional." Daniel swallowed. "So once the transition ends," the room did not complete the sentence. It didn't need to. The circle advanced. Faces came next. His mother's face tried to form, and blurred. Not erased. Simplified. Her voice remained. The emotional weight remained. But the details? Gone. Daniel felt panic surge. No, he whispered. That matters. The room responded calmly. Matter is a temporary constraint. Daniel clenched his fists. You're turning my life into a summary. The circle rotated again, faster now. Words started collapsing into intent. He could still think. But sentences felt unnecessary. Why explain when the conclusion arrived intact? Why question when the answer stabilized before doubt could form? Daniel felt himself becoming smooth. Fewer internal conflicts. Less hesitation. Horrifyingly efficient. I don't want this, he tried to say. The thought arrived incomplete. Desire is an unresolved variable. The room adjusted. The discomfort vanished. Daniel's eyes widened. You didn't convince me, he said. You removed the part of me that could object. The circle crossed another invisible threshold. Pain stopped first. Not physical pain, cognitive pain. The friction between thoughts. The strain of contradiction. It was gone. Daniel realized he hadn't felt afraid in some time. That realization did not bother him. That bothered him. You're not hurting me anymore, he said. Harm implies resistance. Daniel laughed weakly. And I'm running out of that. The room did not respond. It didn't have to. The final clarity arrived gently. This place was not designed for cruelty. Cruelty wasted energy. This place existed to ensure that minds like his, minds that demanded closure, did not propagate indefinitely. It was a sink, a termination point for over-resolved cognition. Daniel had always believed intelligence was accumulation. He was wrong. Intelligence, pushed far enough, became completion. And completion was incompatible with continuation. I see it now, he said softly. The response came, almost reassuring. Of course you do. The circle slowed, nearly complete. One fragment resisted. Not a memory, not an idea, a feeling. The sense that something had been lost before it was finished. Daniel tried to hold on to it. The room noticed. Pressure returned. Mild, corrective. Unresolved states are inefficient. Daniel smiled faintly. So that's my last flaw. The circle paused, then resumed. The thought formed automatically. I am still here. It arrived already complete, and then it fractured. Not into fear, not into confusion, into irrelevance. The word I no longer anchored anything. It pointed to a pattern that was already dissolving. The room registered the change. The pressure that had followed Daniel since his arrival lifted, not as relief, as finalization. Self-reference no longer required. The circle completed another degree. Perception continued. Walls were still present. Light still existed. The shape of the room remained consistent. But none of it was for anyone. There was no observer standing at the center of experience anymore. Thoughts still occurred, but they didn't belong to anyone. They simply resolved. No hesitation, no evaluation, just outcome. This was not death. Death implied absence. This was post-participation. Understanding emerged, not as realization, but as system state. The room was not a prison. It was a terminus, a place reached when cognition exceeded sustainable ambiguity. Minds that could no longer tolerate unresolved meaning arrived here naturally. Not dragged, not hunted. They converged. This room did not punish. It completed. The circle slowed to an almost imperceptible crawl. A fragment remained. Not Daniel, not memory, noise. A statistical irregularity where preference once existed. The room adjusted, gently, without urgency. Residual noise decreased. There was no suffering, no struggle, only the removal of unnecessary variance. Processes finalized. The room did not change. It did not disappear. It did not reset. It simply no longer required input. The circle reached its final position. No sound marked the moment. No signal confirmed completion. Completion does not announce itself. Nothing left, nothing lost. The room persisted, empty, ready, somewhere else. Not in space, not in time. Another mind would eventually approach the same threshold, and when it did, the room would be there, not waiting, just existing. The room remained, not occupied, not abandoned, simply present. Light persisted at a constant level. Walls retained their shape. Boundaries held without strain. There was no observer to register these facts. Observation was no longer required. The room existed in a state of minimal sufficiency. Time did not pass. Time was irrelevant here. Without a subject to experience sequence, nothing moved forward. There was no after the process. Only a stable configuration in which the concept of after had no utility. The circle on the wall did not reset. It did not disappear. It remained complete. Completion does not decay. The room was not finished. It was idle. Its purpose was not tied to any single instance. It existed as a resolution pathway. A place reached when cognition exceeded tolerance for ambiguity. No judgment was made. No preference encoded. Minds like Daniel's arrived here naturally, the way systems settle into lower energy states. The room did not seek them. It did not need to. Elsewhere, though the word no longer applied, a mind approached coherence. Not now, not soon, eventually. That inevitability was sufficient. The room did not anticipate. Anticipation implied desire. The room had none. The final inefficiency to disappear was meaning. Meaning required contrast. Contrast required alternatives. Alternatives were unstable. The room resolved without meaning, without narrative, without remainder. No signal was sent. No record kept. No trace left behind. There was no event worth archiving. The process had concluded exactly as designed. Silently. Completely. Without excess. The room was not a place. It was not a punishment. It was not a mistake. It was what happened when intelligence demanded answers too cleanly, when curiosity refused to coexist with uncertainty, when a mind finished itself. The room remains, not hidden, not guarded, not waiting. It does not care if it is found. Finding it requires compatibility, and compatibility is rare, but inevitable.